no more than 5 pounds if you have those, an assortment of weights. I've got 3s and 5s. All right, so let's begin lying down. We have a request for lower back and hips. So let's just get to it. Have all your toys nearby and join me down on the ground. All your toys, everything nearby, all the fun stuff. Start off with knees bent and feet flat. Let your feet go as wide apart as your mat. Turn your toes in and let your knees lean together. You'll see that I'm inching my toes away so that my knee pits can breathe. You got armpits, you got knee pits. Let your knee pits breathe. So your heels are away from your butt somewhat. And your feet are apart, as wide apart as the mat. Toes turn in and knees lean together. Hands go down low on your belly. Turn your attention inward and let your breath come in and out through your nose. As you breathe in and out through your nose, work up some spit and swallow, and then clear your throat. Find the back or base of your throat. And as you breathe in and out through your nose, let that breath scrape across the back of your throat. This area at the base or the back of your throat is known as Jandalahara Bandha. When you have that slight constriction, that's the engagement of that bandha, that hold or yoga lock. It is said to help you have more power. So as you breathe in and out through your nose, let your breath scrape that throat. Slowing down your breathing. Becoming focused and intentional with our breath. Using our breath strategically to give ourselves more power, more strength to sustain our movements and our daily activities. Conscious manipulation of the breath leads to conscious manipulation of the consciousness. Breathing slow and steady as if you were calm and relaxed will help induce a relaxation response in the body. Hopefully lead to a more relaxed mental state as well. The original yogis were all about manipulating their consciousness. The original yogis practiced these poses and stretches so that they could sit and meditate and achieve an altered state of consciousness. Breath control is mind control, is body control, is mind control. It's all linked together. Breath, mind, and body. So after a few moments of conscious, slow, constricted, restricted breathing, your body may begin to respond and settle in. Feeling parts of your lower back begin to adhere and stick down to the floor. So let's spread things out a little bit more. Take one arm across your body, kind of widen that shoulder out. And then take the other arm across your body, widen the shoulders out. And you might do that 2 or 3 times, spreading your upper back across the floor, getting those shoulder blades to peel away from your spine. I'm going to finish here with this right arm coming across. Left hand is holding onto that right elbow. Feel the shoulder blade peel away from the ground. Hold the elbow in place. Don't let it go anywhere. And then pull the shoulder down to the ground. So without moving that elbow, holding it in place with your left hand, use your shoulder muscles to pull that right shoulder blade back down towards the floor. And you'll feel that stretch in the deltoid, the outer shoulder. And relax. And let's do the other side. Take that left arm across your chest, pull it across. Now hold it in place. Right hand holds that left elbow in space, and you pull your left shoulder blade down towards the ground. And release. Let's do the same for the hips. Bring that right knee up to your chest, pull it across your body, peeling that right hip away from the floor. Hold it in place with your left hand, and then try pulling that right hip down to the ground. Trying up open the right side of your lower back, feeling that stretch on the outside of the hip. And release. Second verse, same as the first. Bring that left knee up and diagonal across. Hold on to it with your right hand. Don't let it go anywhere. And then activate that left hip to pull that left hip back down to the floor, prying open the left side of your lower back. And relax. Always so good. Let's do it again. Bring that right leg up and over. Hold on to it with the left hand. And once again, pull that right hip down to the floor. And relax. Left leg up and over. Pull it across. Let that hip roll off the floor for just a moment. Hold that knee in place. Don't let it go anywhere. And then pull the left hip down to the ground. And relax. Find your yoga blocks. Take one of those blocks, put it between your thighs, bring both knees into your chest. Your challenge, if you choose to accept it, is to crush the brick, activate those inner thighs, squeeze the block really, really hard. Keep squeezing the block really, really hard, and then using your hands, try to pull your knees apart. Don't let your knees separate. So making your legs work extra hard to crush the brick. Thighs are squeezing in, hands are trying to pull out. Let your thighs win. And notice the response in your lower back. And release. Good. Still with that block between your thighs, you're going to cross your arms, hands go to the outside of your knees, and as you pull in with your hands, now your knees try to press out. If they don't go anywhere, let your hands win. Push your knees out. And again, notice how that lower back responds. And relax. Clear the clutter. I still have that block between my knees. I've moved some of the clutter out of the way. Arms can go out to the side. I'm going to cross one big toe on top of the other and lift my heels up to the same height as my hips. Maybe I'll go at a slightly different angle so you can see this. I still have that block between my thighs. I've got my knees over my hips, my heels lifted up to the same height as my hips, and one big toe crossed on top of the other. I'm going to push my heels out wide, at the same time squeeze the block. Feel all kinds of stuff activating there. Find your tummy. As you inhale, prepare, and as you exhale, tuck in those front ribs like you're getting tickled. Now, lower body locked into place. Everything engaged, tense, working, arms out to the sides, and take your legs all the way over to the right. And as you go over to the right, push that top left hip over a little bit more so your knees stay stacked. Come all the way over into that twist, and then you get to relax everything. Left hand can come to your ribs. Breathe. I'm going to uncross my toes. My toes are getting a cramp here. And then come back to center. Second verse, same as the first. Maybe cross the other big toe on top so your toes cramp the other way. Again, your heels are lifted up to the same height as your knees. You've made a nice lap. Your knees are directly over your hips. You're squeezing the block, and at the same time, you're spreading your heels. Toes are hooked to keep your heels from flying apart. Heels are pressing wide, thighs are squeezing in, arms out to the sides. Find those front ribs, and as you exhale, tuck in those front ribs like you're getting tickled. You might even exhale like you're clearing your throat to engage that throat a little bit more for more power, more stability, more strength. And then let's come over into that twist. Take your knees all the way over to the left, and along the way, push that top hip over a little bit more so you can stack up toes, knees, and ankles. Right hand comes to your ribs. So yoga is the union of opposites. It's stretching at the same time, simultaneously strengthening. So if you engage those muscles a little bit more and then come into the twist, engage the muscles and then do some of the work, you'll have a more effective stretch and the bonus of strengthening at the same time. All right, let's lift up the top leg first, the bottom leg up second. Let's come back to center. So good, let's do it again, but this time take that block up between your ankles. Now you got to hold on to it. Feet are flexed, squeezing that block between your ankles. Arms go out to the sides. Begin with an inhale. As you exhale, tuck your chin, tuck in those front ribs, engage your abs, squeezing your thighs together. Feet are parallel because you're just hugging that block between your feet. And legs go over to the right. And along the way, push that top hip over a little bit more. Maybe you could stack your toes, knees, and ankles as you come into that twist. Left hand comes to your ribs so you don't aggravate that left shoulder. I'm going to bend my knees, bring both knees into my chest, roll to center, and get ready to do the other side. Again, ankles holding onto that block, feet are parallel, legs are straight, arms out to the sides. Inhale. As you exhale, tuck into your front ribs, tuck your chin, squeeze the block, and then go over to the left. Take your legs all the way over to the left, very slowly, pushing that top hip over a little bit more as you go. When you hit the deck, then you can relax. Right hand comes to the ribs. From here, continue rolling on over and situate yourself to lie on your side, facing the screen, so you can see what's going on. You can use a block, an arm, pillow, whatever you need to underneath your head as you hike your knees into your chest. Now I've got my mic on the side. I'm trying not to muffle my mic. You might be more comfortable with your head down on your arm, whatever works for you. Knees come in. And you're stacking one hip on top of the other. So find that top hand on the top hip, push the top hip away so you have a long side waist. And the bottom side waist might come off the floor. Top hip pushes over so your knees stack as well. Feet are flexed flat. So top hip pushes away and it pushes over. If you were to run your hand up and down your back waistband, you'd feel that it's vertical straight up and down. Feet are flexed flat. Top hand, that top butt cheek, activate the butt cheek muscle. Engage the top butt cheek muscle. Use your butt cheek to squeeze the butt cheek nice and tight, and then float that top shin just 3 or 4 inches up. That's it. And breathe. Squeezing the top butt cheek the entire time. And lower down. And squeeze, 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 lift up and hover. Squeeze, 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 squeeze the entire time. And lower. 2 more just like that. Squeeze, 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 hover. Breathe. And lower down. 1 more time, squeezing that top butt cheek the entire time. Squeeze and hover. And lower down. We're going to do 4 more. If that feels good for you, if that squeezing the butt cheek is giving you enough intensity, great. But if you want more and you have a little weight and you can tuck that weight behind your knee pit, go there. Squeezing that top butt cheek, pushing the top hip away, pushing the top hip over. Your back waistband is vertical. Hover, hover, hover. Squeeze, 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 squeeze. My feet are still flexed flat. My toes are relaxed. And lower down. Top butt cheek is squeezing the entire time. 3 more just like that. Hover, hover, squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. And release. 2 more. Hover, hover, squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. And release. And 1 more time. Hover, hover, squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. And release. Hopefully, you're starting to feel the burn here. You're going to take that top knee over, staggering the legs one in front of the other. Top hip crossed over top. Arms go out in front. And then with an inhale, take that top arm across the sky like a rainbow, coming into a twist. Whatever hand you just took across the sky like a rainbow, you're going to bend that elbow, put it on your ribs, and get a good twist. And release. Let's go ahead, flip on over, and we'll do the other side. So it doesn't matter which side you have up. We're going to do both sides. Take your weight with you. And we'll do 4 without weight and then 4 with weight. So again, make your head comfortable. It's on the neck or shoulder thing. So make sure that upper body's comfortable. Knees come in close to your chest. Push the top hip away. Push the top hip over. So your knees, toes, and ankles all stack up. Activate that top butt cheek. Squeeze it nice and tight and then hover. Squeeze, 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 and hover the whole time. And lower down. Keep squeezing and hover. So the idea here is to work and fatigue the muscle a little bit, get some blood flow and circulation into it, so that when we come into that twist, here's the third one here, squeeze and hover. Get a good stretch. And release. And fourth one, give it a good hard squeeze, squeezing the entire time and hover, hover, hover. Firming up these outer hip muscles will help stabilize your lower back. If you've got lower back issues, some of these sideline moves should help. Again, you have the option of putting a weight behind the knee in the knee pit for more challenge. Top hip pushing away, hips pushing over, stacking up toes, knees, and ankles. Squeeze, 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 and hover. And release. 3 more just like that. Squeeze and hover. And 2 more to go. Squeezing and hovering. And then final time. Give it a good squeeze and hover, 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 hover. Squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. And then release. All right, that top knee goes on the floor between your bottom knee and chest. Arms go out in front. And with an inhale, take that top arm across the sky like a rainbow. The highest part of that rainbow hand comes to your ribs, and try to encourage that rib cage to rotate a little bit more. And unwind. Let's go over onto hands and knees. Bring your toys with you. Have your pillow, padding for your knees, and then set up for some cat and cow. Cat and cow is one of the healthiest things you can do for your spine. We do it almost every single class. Please join me. Knees underneath hips, hands underneath shoulders. I've got my toes curled under for that added toe stretch. With an inhale, head up, tail up, come into that sway back cow. And as you exhale, pull in your tummy, tuck your tail, come into that cat. Inhaling for cow. And exhaling for cat. Let's do 2 more just like that, moving slow and steady, standard, boring, regular old cat and cow. We do all the time. Now, the next time you find yourself in that cat pose, go ahead, leave your toes curled under, sit back over your heels and reach around and find your block. You might watch the demo here for a moment, giving yourself a toe stretch while you watch the demo. We're gonna take that block on its narrow width, skinny, between my thighs. I'm gonna actually remove the pillow so you can see my knees a little bit more clearly. Pull up my pants too so you can see them. Hands underneath my shoulders, my toes are curled under. I've got that block between my thighs. And as I inhale, come into my cow, my challenge is to push the block back through my thighs to stick out behind me without letting my thighs, my knees widen. I'm going to engage like I'm spreading my heels. So I'm squeezing the block at the same time I'm spreading my heels, and I get a big old booty sway back cow. Please join me. And then as I exhale, my challenge is to keep that block pushing back as I pull my tummy up, arch my back into cat. So if your thighs were the beaters on a hand mixer and you turned on that hand mixer, you would be shooting cake batter through your thighs back behind you the entire time. So there's an inward rotation on those thighs as you move back and forth through your cat and cow. As you move through this cat and cow, you keep your thighs together, hugging that block, but you widen your heels the entire time. And as you press your heels wide, you'll feel those sit bones flare. You'll feel your butt stick out real big. And as those sit bones separate, you want to work on swaying your back for cow. And then as you exhale, come into that cat pose. Keep your sit bones wide, but tuck your tail down between them, waving your tail up and down as you keep your sit bones spread, moving back and forth through cat and cow, prying open your hips a little bit more with the leg activation. All right, now the next time you come into that cat pose, again, you're squeezing that block between your heels, you're squeezing the block between your thighs, spreading your heels, pulling your belly up into your body. Now for added entertainment value, lift your knees up to hover 1 inch off the floor. And just hold and hover. And now you're really working your abs and your thighs. And set your knees down. Inhale for cow. Exhale for cat. Heels wide, thighs squeeze the block. Lift your knees up and hover. And set your knees down. Inhale for cow. Exhale for cat. Exhale for cat. Activate that Janda Mahara Bandha. Tuck in those front ribs. Lift up that pelvic floor and hover. And inhale for cow. One more time. Exhale for cat. Pull in your front ribs. Pull up on that block. Spread those heels as you hover. Knees off the floor 1 inch. And then release. Untuck your toes. Set that block aside. Back it up into child's pose. Fingers spread wide. Hands creep out forward. Keeping your hips stapled back to your heels. Spread your fingers wide. Curl your toes under, but then back your hips up again. Keep your hips pinned back as far back as you can get them. Keep your arms straight and strong. Even press into your hands to keep your hips backing up as you peel your knees up off the ground and come into a downward facing dog. And breathe. Let's take those feet as wide apart as the mat and take your dog for a jog, pedaling your feet, letting your hips swish and sway side to side. Try getting some side to side stretch in your ribs, side to side stretch in your spine. You might pivot on the balls of your feet, swing both heels one way, then both heels the other. Maybe bending one knee, and then bending the other. Pulling your hips out of your armpits, getting really long through the sides of your body. And coming to neutral, rise up onto tippy toes. Bend your knees down to the floor. And as you bend your knees down to the floor, try keeping your hips backed up. Slowly come down the way you went up. And then finally untuck your toes. And once again, staple your hips to your heels. Big toes together, knees apart, hips are back on your heels. Arms are stretched out in front. Walk both hands over to the right off the side of your mat and lean into your left side ribs, getting a good stretch. And then walk both hands over to the left and lean in to your right side body. Coming back to neutral. And then you might walk your hands back to your lap. Take a moment to roll out your wrists, fan your fingers. Make nice with your wrists as you watch the demo. If you've done this before, you can just come on down and join me. But if this is new to you, just sit back on those heels, roll out your wrists and watch. In a moment, you'll take both hands over to the right. And in a moment, as you inhale, you push down into that bottom hand, let the top arm float. Take a nice long side stretch. And then exhale, round down like you're getting tickled. Pull in those front ribs, pull in your tummy. As I inhale, I push into that right hand, arch side body, nice and long. And then exhale, curl down. So please join me. Fingertips come to the floor, walk both hands over to the right as far to the right as they'll go. You're going to anchor that right hand on the ground. And as you inhale, let that left arm float into a side stretch. And exhale, pulling your front ribs, pulling your tummy round down. 3 more. Big inhale, stretch. Exhale. It's like you're getting tickled. Inhale, open wide, stretch, 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 stretch. And then as you exhale, it's like you suddenly got tickled, pulling those front ribs, kind of cringe, curve down. All the while still pushing into that bottom hand, anchoring yourself here, keeping your hips pinned back down to your heels. And when you've done 4 on this side, you're going to reset and switch sides and repeat. So 4 on the other side, anchoring your left hand down, letting that right arm float. Inhale, stretch. Exhale down. This is a good stretch for that lower back, that quadratus lumborum. And a bit of a side stretch here. And a bit of a hip stretch too. And again, mindful of your breathing. Big inhale. And then exhale, pulling in your tummy, rounding your back. The more you pull in your tummy around your back, the more you feel this in the lower back. So now your challenge is to come back to neutral. And that feeling you had on the right side and the feeling you had on the left side of your lower back, go for that sensation in your downward facing dog. So bottoms up, join me in a downward facing dog. Pull in that lower belly, pull in your front ribs, even tuck your chin a little bit as you take that dog for a walk once again, and try to pull your abs in to stretch your lower back as you swish your hips side to side. So the difference between being down on your knees, walking your hands off to one side, and being up here in a down dog is what's moving side to side. A moment ago, you were moving your hands, and now you're moving your hips. Hopefully getting that same sensation, keeping that belly pulled in, front ribs tucked, chin tucked a little bit, supporting yourself from below to pry open that lower back. As you take this happy dog for a walk, pulling in that lower belly, pulling in those front ribs, tucking your chin even as you swish, shift forward, come to the top of a push-up, a plank pose. And then back it up into down dog. Walking your hands up to your feet up to your hands, find yourself in a forward fold. And along the way, find your weights. You're gonna bend your knees, put your elbows on your lap, then transfer your hands up onto your lap, pulling your front ribs, pulling your belly, walk up your lap as you come all the way up to standing. I'm gonna come into this once again, block between your thighs, just for good measure. Block between your thighs, gives you a nice hip width apart, helps you engage those inner thighs, squeezing that block. My feet are parallel, pointing in the same direction. I'm gonna keep my knees unlocked and spread my heels. You don't actually see anything happen when I do that, but I'm spreading my heels wide at the same time, squeezing the block with my knees slightly bent. Shoulders shrug up onto my back. I'm gonna shave my legs. This is what it looks like from the front. This is what it looks like from the side. So my knees are unlocked. I'm squeezing that block. I'm spreading my heels, pulling in my belly as I shave down the tops of my socks and shave up those thigh highs. No, you're just shaving your legs. And as you do this, squeeze the block, spread your heels, let your butt stick out, and then pull in that lower belly, tuck your tail to come up. So this is kind of like your cow pose. And then pulling in that lower belly, tucking your tail like your cat. And you're shaving your legs the entire time. Keeping those legs active. I'm spreading my heels, I'm squeezing the block, I'm keeping my knees unlocked. As I lower down, I'm doing my cow, sticking out my butt. And as I pull in my tummy, tuck my tail, come all the way up, I'm doing that cat pose. A couple more here, shaving your legs. In strength training, this is called a deadlift. It's to work the back of your legs. So again, for today, we're working the muscle a little bit, fatiguing it, and then we're going to give it a good stretch. At the same time, we're prying open that lower back, getting really acquainted with those sit bones here. A couple reps into this, maybe you're starting to feel the backs of your thighs, really starting to feel those sit bones. And then stay close to your shins. You're shaving your legs the entire time. You'll see my toes are lifting up as well. I'm really trying to engage everything here. How about one more? Shave down, sit bones go wide, and into that space between the sit bones, you're going to pull up that lower belly, tuck your tail. The upper body comes along for the ride. All right, let's set the brick aside. Starting at the front edge of your mat, you're going to take a giant step back with your right foot. And you'll see that my feet are on opposite diagonal corners of the mat. I've got one on the right side, one on the left. So there's a midline down the middle of my mat, and I'm not on it. Big step back with that right foot. Wiggle, wiggle that right heel back, 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 and make a lap. Front knee is bent. Wiggling that back heel back, 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 back. You can let your arms hang here. Pressing hard into that back heel, feeling the calf muscle stretch. Shoulder shrug up onto your back. Now engage like you're dragging your front foot backward, your back knee forward. What does that look like? What does that feel like? Well, from rear view, it feels and it looks like you're pulling your left leg backward, letting the pocket change dump out of your right hip pocket. And you can imagine a camera pointed up your backside, being shy, squeezing that left butt cheek up against the right inner thigh. Scissoring your legs closed. Feel that inner thigh, the mula bandha, the pelvic floor engage. Now shoulders shrug away from your ears. That's what the rear view looks like. With your shoulders shrugged away from your ears, shrug those shoulders up onto your back and release. Shrug those shoulders up onto your back and release. Keep working that lower body. Shrug those shoulders up onto your back and release. Keep working it. Shrug those shoulders up onto your back and release. One more time. Give that good shoulder shrug. Keep those shoulders on your back. Chin is tucked, and then pull those elbows up to your nipples and then down to the floor. Elbows up to your nipples and down to the floor. You're pinching your shoulder blades together, squeezing those shoulder blades together. The beginning of class, you were pulling shoulder blades to the floor. Now you're pulling shoulder blades together onto your back up towards the ceiling. Both of them at the same time. Now I'm notorious. I cannot count, do anything else at the same time, but I think we've done about 8 here on this side. And then release. I'm going to bend my knees, step forward, step back, switch sides. Transfer one hand, both hands up onto my lap. Take a moment with hands on your lap to get those legs working. Pulling the front leg backward, the back leg forward, maybe pivoting on the ball of the back foot. Back heel can be lifted. Scissoring those legs for the inner thighs, that pelvic floor working. And then hinging over, just let those arms dangle. Shrug those shoulders onto your back and release. Shoulder shrug and release. We're doing 4 shoulder shrugs. Chin is tucked. You're admiring your pedicure on that front foot. Maybe you can relax your toes. Keeping those shoulders on your back, shave up to your nipples and down. Shave up and down. Imagine like pulling on a knee sock. Just shaving up and down. And when we've done 8 on this side, you're still working that lower body the entire time. You're going to release. Once again, bend both knees, step forward, come into that forward fold. Leave the weights on the floor as you transfer your hands up onto your lap. Arch your back for your cat. Inhale for your cow. Exhale for cat. Inhale for cow. Making nice with your lower back, tucking and untucking your tail. Think about tucking that tail in, pulling in that lower belly, lifting those inner thighs, and then letting it all hang out. Couple more here. Now keep your feet about hip width, mat width apart. Hands are braced on your inner thighs. You still have those bent knees. One hand on either thigh, knees are pushing wide. Locate your belly, pull that up into your body, pull up on that pelvic floor, lift that right arm dangle. And then with an inhale, sweep that right arm up and open. Follow it with your gaze and release. Same side, same arm. Inhale, sweep that right arm up and open. And as you do so, push that left knee wide. And release. One more time on this side. Big inhale up, open, and release. Other side. Inhale, sweep that left arm open. Right hand pushes that knee wide, and release. Two more on this side. And come back to neutral. Reach around, find your blocks, wherever they got off to. You're going to park those blocks at the front edge of your mat. From the front edge of your mat, take a giant step back with your right foot. Same idea. If I move my blocks out of the way, you can see I've got one foot on either side of the mat. There's length and width between my feet. Hands are on blocks directly beneath my shoulders, and you can see that my shoulders are level. I'm also showing you the top of my head. My head is an extension of my spine. That's what the front view looks like. Maybe you could see my hips in this front view, maybe not. I'm going to turn sideways so that maybe you can indeed see my hips and also see the stride between my feet. A nice long stride between my feet. I have pants where you can see the waistband. I am pulling that front leg backward, the back leg forward, and pivoting on the ball of the back foot, getting those inner thighs to engage. Pulling in that lower belly, tucking the tail, tucking my chin, doing my best cat pose, and then flipping my buns up towards the sun, doing my best cow. I've got my hands on blocks so I can play around with my cat and my cow. Think about, as you come into that cat pose, keeping your heels pressing wide. What? That means your right foot moves to the right, the left foot moves to the left. As you move back and forth through cat and cow, can you keep your inner thighs kissing, but spread your heels? That sounds familiar. You've done that before. So the right foot is pushing to the right, the left foot is pushing to the left. At the same time, you're squeezing your inner thighs together as you do your cat and cow. You're not getting a lot of movement. Get up higher. Taller blocks. Maybe put your hands on a chair. Maybe come up onto fingertips. So you can indeed get a little bit more cat and cow. If you're struggling to balance, make sure you wiggle that front foot wider. More width between your feet will give you more control. When you've done a little bit of cat and cow here, then you get to step forward and step back and switch sides. Hello, hips. So we're doing pyramid pose on the other side now. Squaring off, leveling the hips. Engaging like you're scissoring the legs closed. Maybe pick up that back heel. Spreading the right foot to the right, the left foot to the left. At the same time, keeping those inner thighs engaged. Play around with your cat and your cow. So this looks deceptive. It looks like I'm just kind of standing around here. But when I'm coming into my cat pose, I'm pulling in that lower belly, tucking my tail. Maybe I can press that back heel closer to the floor. And then as I come into that cow, I'm still working it. Letting those sit bones go wide, spreading my feet, right foot to the right, left foot to the left. Same time, keep that pelvic floor engaged, scissoring the legs closed at all times. These standing poses are said to be hip openers. And they really only open your hips if you work them. And then when you've had enough of that, you bend both knees, step forward, Once again, come into your forward fold. Got those blocks underneath your hands. Hands go as wide as apart as the feet. Sorry, feet go as wide apart as the mat. And you let your hips jog side to side. All the way from one side to the other. If your lower back's happy with this, you can wrap your fingers around your elbows and swish and sway like an elephant. Getting your pelvis to roll across the tops of your thigh bones. Feeling all kinds of fun stuff going on in that lower back and hips. Coming to neutral, reaching down, finding your weights. Put your elbows on your lap. So you got to make a lap, put your elbows on your lap, and put your hands on your lap. Pull your tummy in and walk your hands up your lap to come all the way up to standing. Let's open up the front of the hips a little bit. Standing once again at the front edge of your mat. Giant step back, right foot. Wiggle the front foot wider, hop the back foot wider, give yourself some width as well as length. And as scissor your legs closed, come up on the tippy toes of the back foot, the front knee is bent, and I am washing machine, washerwoman, my hips here. And I've got the weights along for fun. Good. So I drive that right hip forward, left hip backward, and then I release. I'm squeezing my thighs together, and then I release. Squeeze and twist. And the weights are just there for fun. A little extra shoulder work here with the weights. Mostly doing this for the hips, lower back. And then screw that twist top on nice and tight. So that right hip is coming forward. This is my right leg back. Right hip coming forward, left thigh pulling back, scissoring my thighs together. Palms are forward for a good shoulder shrug, up, back, and down as you come into that nice lunge. And breathe. Give yourself a couple bicep curls here just for fun. Front ribs and belly pull in. Front ribs and belly pull in. I'm not counting these because we're doing both arms at the same time. Don't have to count. And release. Both hands come to your lap. Step forward, step back. Let's do the other side. Big step, go long. Give yourself length and width between your feet. You're going to scissor those legs and then release. Twisting and release. Screw down, twist top. Working those arms if you like. I'm pivoting on the ball of the back foot, swinging that back heel a little bit wider each time. Pulling the front hip back a little bit more each time. And then finally, screw that jar lid down nice and tight, pulling that back hip forward, swinging the back heel wide, pulling the front thigh back. Settle down, back leg nice and straight and strong. Do a good shoulder shrug, up, back, and down. Pull in your front ribs, pull in your belly. Good. You can bring your arms up, elbows level with your shoulders, and as you push your arms forward, pull that tummy back and bring it back in. Push out, pull that tummy in tight and release. Push out, pull that tummy in tight and release. Giving yourself a good strong stretch down the front of that thigh. Even if you're not using weights, just pushing your hands forward, hand like you're pushing energy across the room, helps you pull that tummy in tighter, gives you a more effective hip stretch. One more time, push out, pull that tummy in and release. Hands to the thigh, step forward. Once again, come into that forward fold and set those weights aside. Going to transition down to the floor. So hands come to the ground as you step back into that downward facing dog. And once again, jog that dog
Feel all the fun stuff happening in your hips, lower back. All right. Find your blocks. Have your blocks and your pillow nearby, ready to go. You're gonna rise up onto the tippy toes. Exhale, pull in your front ribs, pull in your belly. Drive that right knee forward. And set up for a pigeon pose. Fill the gap between your butt cheek and the floor, between that sit bone and the ground. Now, it's not uncommon for people to complain of tight hips. Oh, my hips are so tight all the time. What might actually be happening is that those hip muscles are so weak. They're trying to hold your pelvis together for you all day, every day. They feel exhausted. And then coming into this pose, stretching out those hip muscles, great. Feels good for the moment. But then an hour or two later, your hips hurt worse. It's because those hip muscles aren't very strong. And they're working so hard all day, every day to hold your pelvis together. Keep your lower back happy. But those poor hip muscles are crying. So the solution for tight hip muscles might not necessarily be stretching them all the time. You might want to consider working them a little bit more, making them stronger overall so that they can actually relax and stay relaxed. Pulling in your abs helps stabilize that lower back too. So here we are stretching out that hip. You got your right knee forward, your left knee down on the floor, hands are underneath your shoulders. And as you exhale, come into that cat pose, engage like you're pulling the front thigh backward, the back thigh forward, and maybe that front knee will swing out to the side a little bit more. Maybe you'll get your hips squared and a little bit more level. You'll get a more intense hip stretch. You can keep working that, pulling the front leg backward, the back leg forward, squaring and leveling those hips, doing that washerwoman thing we were just doing standing up. Pry open that hip and lower back even more. Again, hopefully you can see here my back waistband. I'm trying to keep my hips level and squared forward. So this back waistband parallel to the front edge of the mat. Pulling the front hip backward, the back hip forward. So my hip bones are parallel to the front edge of the mat and level, horizontal. And then you get to bail out. Let's do the same thing on the other side. Coming into that downward facing dog, transferring your stuff to the other side, driving the left knee forward, putting a block, a pillow, blanket, something underneath that hip. Those hip muscles are stubborn and they don't want to let go. So giving them a little support will let them feel more firmly attached, more comfortable, and therefore more likely to relax and let go once you get deeper into the stretch. Same thing, hands underneath your shoulders. Exhale, pull in those front ribs, pull in your belly, do your best cat pose, and then washer machine your legs, pulling that front leg back, the left hip forward. That's your right hip forward, squaring and leveling off your hips again. Flat backside here as you come into this pigeon pose. Now you can see my foot here. There's two variations of pigeon pose. The one where your toes are pointed back down by your pubis bone, or the one where your foot is up near your armpit and the toes are flexed forward. Either way is legit. They just do two different things. and then release. All right, downward facing dog. Once again, have all your toys nearby. We're going to set them up to sit on them. So if you take your 2 blocks, one for each butt cheek configuration, and then maybe even cover that up with a pillow, give yourself even more height, you'll be able to join me in this next seated pose. So sitting on those blocks, knees bent, feet flat. Gonna reach underneath with your left hand, find that right ankle, and pull that right ankle out to the side. There's my knee. Other leg crosses over. Roll it across. Try to stack your knees. And then if it works for you, get that other foot back next to your hip as well. So you're not actually sitting on your feet, you're sitting between your feet. I'm sitting on blocks. Some of you will be sitting on the floor. Not me, but some of you. Ideally, you can get your hip bones higher than your knee bones. That means your thighs slant down and away. You have to have really loose hips for that to work. It doesn't work for everybody. Also, if you got meat on your legs, it doesn't work so well either. You also want to mind the gap. If you got a gap between your knees, put a pillow in there. If you got a gap between your bottom knee and the floor, put a pillow under there. Fill into those spaces so that those knees can relax and everything can settle. Reach back, lift and separate. You want to sit perky on the front edge of your sit bones. Settle in. So we did quite a bit to warm up, work, and stretch those hips. So hopefully you can stay here. But if your knees are talking to you and it's just not working, simple cross-legged will do. Couple of weights. They didn't get too far away. Palms forward, great big shoulder shrug. Inhale up. Exhale back and down. If you just have these little 3-pounders, if they fit, you can put both of them in one hand, great. You got a little bigger weight, you could do just one heavy weight. This is your right hip down on the floor. It's really well anchored. It's not going anywhere. So take that right arm up. Good. Elbow bends. Hold it in place alongside your head. Don't let it go anywhere. Just stay here for the stretch. The weights in your hand will help plug that arm bone into socket. Keep it settled, sunk it in. Front ribs and belly pull in, sitting up tall on the front edge of your sit bones, feeling a lovely stretch. If that works for you, and if you can keep your elbow narrow close to your head, you might hold on to it while you do this, keeping that elbow narrow close to your head. You can play around with a little tricep extension. Granted, your weights aren't too heavy. You might just need to do a light weight. You're going to do the tricep extension. What's nice is having this same side hip really well anchored. Not going anywhere. Elbow narrow close to your head. So you have options. You can do the little tricep extension or just stay here and get a lovely tricep stretch. Either way is legit. Trying to distract you from your hips a little bit, because I know this can be a very intense hip thing. And when you've had enough of that, come on down. Then we're going to do the other side. So I'm just going to sit back, rock back, shake out my legs, and then do the same thing on the other side. So again, knees bent, feet flat. This time reach across with your right hand, grab a hold of that left ankle, pull it on over, and then the other leg crosses. Trying to stack up your knees. And again, if you have a foot that swings back next to your hip, go ahead, put it there. Mine don't do that. Mind the gap, fill in the spaces with whatever you have nearby, and then consider your toys. Left hip is really well anchored, so the weights go in the left hand and behind you. The weights in your hand will help drag that arm bone into the shoulder joint and give you a nice, strong stretch. Front ribs and belly pull in. Sit down and breathe. You can stay here for the stretch, or if it works for you, and the weight's not too heavy, you do the little tricep extensions. The tricep extension is if your elbow stays next to your head. Your elbow wanders away from your head, then you're no longer working your triceps. You're starting to aggravate some of your shoulder stabilizer muscles, and you don't want to be doing that. There's other ways to do tricep work. If this isn't working for you, fine. do something else some other time. All right. Or either just staying here for the static stretch or working those triceps a little bit. Breathing. And release. All right. Come off of that, and you get to lie down and admire your handiwork. Notice how your body feels as compared to the beginning of class. You might have that pillow for underneath your head, have your toys nearby, but first, lie down. Oh, and notice how much more of your lower back is on the ground. And let's finish the way you began. So go ahead and take one arm across, widen that shoulder out. And then take the other shoulder across, widen that shoulder out. Take one leg across, widen out your hips. Take the other leg across, widen out your hip. And then settle in. Toes turn in, knees lean together. You can join me for constructive rest pose, half Shavasana, or if full Shavasana feels good for you, suntan like Superman, stretch out. Settling in, closing your eyes, clearing your throat, finding that breath in the back of your throat.